of First Chinese Church and a cousin to Leonard and his family. Right now, I just want to, there's so many of different groups here today. Right now we have our Nakapuna senior group, who Connie Cole is in our head. We have some Nakapuna people here. Just raise your hand and wave. We also have our Wednesday morning, some of the ladies, we have a sewing fellowship. And they're here today, so that's the group there. Wait. And then we have friends and family and relatives of Leonard. This is my mom, Mrs. E, my cousin Leanne and Lorna, and the rest is Leonard's. Classmates from Hilo High.
Classmates, all the young looking ones.
So, what was a big surprise to Connie was when I made arrangements with her to have Leonard come, and I mentioned his name. She said, "Leonard Chuck, is that the Chuck from the Big Island?" They're related. They found out that they're related.
Very closely related. Oh, surprise.
So Connie has something for her. And then
oh my.
Just a little welcome. This is indeed a pleasure for me, because when Karen said, there's a person who can speak, my uncle can speak, I said, oh, good, because as I said, there are a few of us who are with the senior group here, and of course this is an important subject. So after the second call, I said, Karen, what is your speaker's name? Dr. Leonard. Dr. Leonard Chuck. Leonard Chuck. His father and I are first cousins, and come to find out his mother is Karen's aunt. And I thought, how close can you get? You know, and it is a pleasure. And we do want to welcome you. Just out of curiosity, I'm just, how many of you are related to Lester? And I know a number of you are classmates. How many of you are classmates of Lester? I mean, Leonard. Classmates, yeah. And the rest of us, I think, are from the First Chinese. How many of you are from First Chinese and from our Kapuna? So we've got a good group here. And I hope you all have time later on to really get together, okay?
When I show up.
Shall we turn it over to him now? Okay. Well,
thank you. Can you hear? Can you hear back there? I may well not use the microphone. It's a real pleasure to come and talk to you guys. It is quite a diverse group. But it all started at Uncle Arthur Yee's memorial service back in April or February, when I was, Arthur Yee was a member of this church. We were having his memorial ceremony in Kailua, or Kaneohe. And I was talking to my cousin. I was talking, I run a clinical trial center, so we're doing a lot of work on diabetes, and we're doing some work on muscle strength, and a lot of different areas. But I was talking to him about diabetes, and he says, in our family we have a lot of diabetes. And I said, what are you talking about? So we found that a lot of our members of the Lee family, my mother's family, had diabetes. And so I started talking with my other cousins, and I want to thank Karen and Becky and Brad and Tim Tracy for arranging this. It really came through my aunt Virginia, who's actually at the city, my mother's youngest sister, and she wanted to listen to this because she's a diabetic. And Victor, I think you have diabetes as well. So, that's why I started. Then we had a reunion in July with my classmates in Reno. For the last few years we've been meeting annually, and this year Terry and Patsy were up there. And we're just having a good time we met at Keith Ching's house, and Keith told me a couple of years ago that he was a diabetic. So I told him, we talked about it early on, and I said, I want to give you a talk to tell you and explain to you what type 2 diabetes is all about, because it's not insulin and sugar. And so I came and gave that talk. Before that, I wanted to give him this talk, because our classmates were all about 70. We're doing, at the Clinical Trial Center, we're doing a study on what's called sarcopenia, the loss of muscle strength in a big muscle fiber. And one of the real keys to that is that we have learned that after 50, human beings lose 1% of their lean body mass every year after 50. So that with that, you just get, the lean body mass, the muscle mass gets smaller. What we also learned is that at 75, there seems to be a significant drop in the quality of people's lives. And our reason for that is that if you lose 1% of your lean body mass every year, and therefore lose your strength at that rate, when you're 75, you will have lost at least 25% of your strength. And I think that's what causes you to actually have a tremendous drop in the quality of your life. So this talk is actually designed to actually teach you how you can actually get it back. And I have to recognize my wife for having put up with all of the work and probably getting this ready. So the title of this talk is Better, Stronger, Younger. But it really is better, stronger, younger. So there's a little difference in the emphasis of how we go about doing that. So the question, I'm going to go through a whole series of questions and we'll see how you. Just advance it here. Good. So the questions I asked are, what do you mean, what does it mean to be young? How do you stay young? Or can you stay young? Is that a possibility? And when you say young, do you mean it physically or mentally? And Mel, my brother-in-law, once told me, he says, mentally, you either are or you aren't. There's nothing we can do that. But physically, that's something you can do about it, something about it. So, and that's pretty much true. So the question is, can a person, is it possible to stay young? And so I'm going to try to give you a recipe so you can actually do that. How much time and effort do you need to actually to remain young? Again, we're going to try to give you that information. So how do you know you're young? I used to tell my patients as an intern, you close your eyes, how old do you think you are? And that's really the actual age that you're actually feeling. So is this age, is it chronologic or is it biological? Now chronologically, we've learned that the average lifespan in the United States in the 50s was 47 and a half. That's probably why the Social Security age is at 55. But now, the age in 1990 is 74 and a half. And now it's, for women it's 82 and for men it's 79. So in our lifetime, the average lifespan in the United States has almost doubled, which is really remarkable. So the question is, in terms of biologic age, what are we looking at? The quality of a person in their 80s today is like what's happening when a 50-year-old was. I remember watching Mr. Chun playing tennis at Lincoln Courts in Hilo, and he was 50 years old. I remember looking at him, man, that old man's still playing tennis. Now it's really commonplace. The guys at 50 are just starting. And I think, he might be just continuing to play. So the question is, can you do what you want to do biologically? In terms of mental capacity, we've learned at the UC San Francisco that in order to maintain your mental faculties, you have to do something that's really intense. You have to really use your brain and really force it to actually think hard, because when you do that, Eric Kandel at Columbia has taught us that you actually build dendrites and actually build memory. So things like math and music that requires a lot of your brain, or learning a new language. really helpful in terms of maintaining your mental faculties. But physically, you need to actually have the proper stimulus to actually rebuild your muscles. And what we're looking for is strength and endurance, or endurance. And I'm gonna posit or argue that they're very different. So, what keeps you young? What do you need to do? Because you know that you could have a really active old person, and they really seem young. So on the other hand, you can have a youngster, in the 30s and 40s, and they don't do anything. They're like real old. So let's go back. And then, so chronologically, it's really not. Let's go back. Not what I do. Yeah. So if your age is not chronological, that makes you old. What is it then? So the chronological age, it doesn't mean you're always young. But what it really is physiologically, that's what really dictates how old you can actually be. And you're physiologically old when you can't do what you want to do while you're alive. What's it about? It's how well you live, how much you want to do. Your physical age, this is really interesting because as you get older, you say, well, how can you tell you're physically getting, older? Well, sometimes it's hard to go to the bathroom because it's really kind of tricky getting on the toilet and off. The bathroom is kind of dangerous. Or do you go out to shopping, or have you curtailed that? My partner at the Alba Central Research, he says, as you grow older, sometimes it's hard to stand and put your pants on because you don't have enough strength. And you see, no, that's one form of getting older. Yeah. Sometimes, you used to go out to lunch with the gang and you love to do that, but you lost strength, so you don't do that often. Or if you travel, I notice that as people get older, traveling becomes more difficult. Why? Because they don't have the strength to, make the transfers, put the luggage up, or it's just a pain in the butt to actually do it. The real question is, physically, do you really feel alive? Some of the problems as you grow older, you see, man, it's really hard to go up and downstairs. It's difficult to put on your pants or just standing there. You tend to fall over. It's really scary to get in and out of a chair because as you get down there, you don't have the strength that some of you hit the toilet or you hit the edge of the chair, you can hurt yourself. And you can even be much younger and you kind of run out of gas at the end of the day. You come home after a hard day's work and you're so tired that when your 11-year-old son or daughter says, hey, let's go throw some ball, you say, geez, I'm so tired. And you've just missed that one opportunity in life to go and toss a ball with your son or daughter. And that's really getting old. Again, stop traveling because it's too hard. Or you don't go out to dinner or lunch or because it's just a humbug. Those are all episodes of actually getting old. You don't play any tennis because you can't keep up with the other threesome. And you're the worst and fourth person you don't like doing it. But the other thing is that on the golf course you start playing OMG. That's old man golf. With driver, 3-wood, wedge, putter. Driver, every move like that. Oh, that's old man golf. So youth requires this strength. And have you ever noticed, if you look at the people around you who are really active and really living, they've maintained their strength. So the predicate to actually, enjoying life to its fullest is really to maintain your strength. If you have no strength, you're going to get old. If you've got the strength, you won't get old as fast when you're younger. So the strength is really the key to maintaining your activity and being young. The interesting thing is if you can build that strength and keep up that strength at whatever age. Your muscles do not know how old you are. Okay? Better? Can you hear? Okay, up. Is it on? Okay, there. Better? Better? Okay, good. Yeah, your muscles don't know how old you are. I'm surprised that somebody told that to somebody. What? But your muscle at 85 will grow to the same extent as it does when you're 5. And the reason for that is that you have to give the proper stimulus to that muscle in order for it to grow. So how can you grow that strength? Now, how can you build and maintain that strength irrespective of age? The interesting thing is that the premise for this is that the strength, the physical strength, requires proper stimulus of the muscle strength fibers. And the reason I was trained as a muscle physiologist, a cardiac muscle physiologist, and that's why I can relate that to you. Everyone needs to maintain this muscle strength just to stay young. In order to do that, that'll help you stay active. Every muscle, skeletal muscle, on the skeleton that actually moves your body, is composed of 2 distinct types of fibers. The endurance fibers, movement fibers. You use those fibers for moving around, mobility, running, walking, biking, rowing, dancing, whatever. And the strength fibers are very distinct. So every muscle you have is composed of a percentage of strength and muscle fibers that are endurance fibers that are interspersed within each other. The strength fibers are what you need to help you with what we call, sometimes some people call balance, to avoid falls, helps you work in the yard, be active, and really, these are the muscles that you really need in order to live well. When you build these fibers, you have to stimulate them very differently. The endurance fibers that you use really respond to aerobic activity, movement activity. And what happens is what you do is you increase the capillary density, so you increase the blood flow to the muscle. And you also change the way that the mitochondria, or the energy exchanging compounds, actually produce energy. So you become more efficient. The mitochondria become more efficient. The strength fibers, contradistinction to that, respond only to resistance. And in order to do that, when you actually stimulate these strength fibers, there's a bump in growth hormone and what we call somatomethrin C that we see when we actually stress the muscles. And what it does is it actually increases the percentage of strength fibers in that one muscle. So the goal is actually to increase the strength, number of strength fibers. For endurance and aerobic activity, you need walking, running, biking, swimming. The real cool one is shopping. You want to shop for your endurance. Elliptical trainers, and then curves, they have a lot of activities there, but you need to move. That's how you gain your aerobic fitness. The strength fibers, on the other hand, require resistance. That is, you have to have some weight bearing. You can use anything. You can use a can of Spam or pork and beans. You can use a frying pan. You can use a rock. All you need is the weight that you can actually use to actually stimulate the growth of the muscle. The interesting thing is there are nice things, the things you need to have to build that strength, and the things that are nice to have so you can do what you want to do. In order to build strength, you need to have resistance work. You need to have the strength to build the endurance in that muscle, in the endurance fibers. But by doing work on the endurance fibers, you don't build strength. And that's an important distinction. So it's nice to have the strength, the endurance, but you need the strength first. It's nice to be able to live, but you need the strength. You need to have the strength first. Strength is the predicate to being able to be active and to really enjoy it. There's a gender difference. Yes?
Pull the microphone a little higher.
Okay, can you hear that better? Better? Okay, good. There's a difference in the percentage of these strength and endurance fibers with gender. In men, in the upper body, there's a lot of strength fibers, about 80% strength fibers. And in the lower body, it's about 50-50. In women, upper body, there are very few strength fibers, like 30% of strength fibers. But in the legs, they've got 80% of strength fibers. And that's really cool because if you go into these gyms and you go to the aerobic classes, you notice that they're all women. And the reason for that is that they have the strength in the legs. So when they do the aerobics, they can go forever. The guys gear up, and they just crap up. And, most of them have this ego or macho. They can't handle that. So you never see guys. If you see a guy in an aerobics class, he's either been there a long time or he's really very, very fit. That's very, very unusual. But you need to have the strength muscle. So when a muscle contracts, it does one of two things. It either shortens or develops force. So the muscle shortening part of it is called the contraction phase. And generally we look at the lengthening of the muscle. That's called the relaxation phase. But when you actually build the muscle strength fiber, what you need to do is you need to slowly lengthen the muscle while bearing weight. And it has to do with the structure of the muscle, how it's actually functioning. Because what the muscle tries to do is, if it has weight and you're lengthening it, it tries to hold that weight so that it won't drop. And when it does that, what it does, it creates microscopic tears, really reactive, that's inside the muscle. And the response of that tear is to actually increase the size of that muscle. That's how you stimulate the growth hormone in somatostatin C. Oh, it transfers, yeah. Oh, the picture got smaller. Yeah. Any questions? Great. So I'm going to try to get you stronger. That's saying how you get stronger. Hopefully give you a plan so you actually do it fairly efficiently. What else? Okay, so what happens when you build strength is that you slowly lengthen the muscle while bearing weight. And what that does is it creates these tears. It provides, when you lower that weight, when you're doing this weightlifting, it's really key to actually lower it almost 10 times slower than you pull it up. The contraction phase really doesn't build it. It's on that negative phase when you're trying to create these microscopic tears. So if you slow it about 10 times slower than you pull it up, that's what will provide that stimulus. The microscopic tears, what causes pump and growth hormone, and an interesting thing, that pump and growth hormone actually works on many other cells, skin. I'm not sure about the hair. It didn't work in me. But these microscopic tears really help grow muscle fibers and actually make you have a stronger muscle. The interesting thing is after the tear, you'll know that you actually created a tear because your muscle will not ache that first day or the day after. But it does ache 2 days later. It's what we call the delayed onset of muscle soreness. And for those of you who have lifted weights in the past, you realize, geez, you wonder why it is that there's a delay of a couple days. And that's something you want to look for. So, if you have problems like difficulty climbing stairs, what do you need? Well, you need the strength in your thighs so you can actually go up and down the stairs. If you run out of gas, you need just overall strength in all of your muscles. If you're not traveling, again, you need all of those strength muscles to help you boost your luggage up into the top and actually make those transfers. If you're not playing tennis, you need muscles all over the place to play tennis. And the real key when you're sitting down on a toilet or actually getting into a chair, or you're getting in a real low, soft chair, you really need to have muscles in your quads so you can get up and down. So that's what you're left with. So, and interesting, if you don't have enough golf muscles, you need to try to get strong like Tiger. That's hard to do. So here's some of the rules for actually doing the lifting. Before you lift weights, you always need to be warm aerobically, need to be perspiring. And the reason for that is that if you just go and lift weights, walk in and lift weights, the load on your heart is too great. Your systemic vascular resistance is so high. And the heart really has to push hard. And what you'll find is your heart rate will bump up really fast, and your heart will be just pounding. And the reason for that is that the vessels all are tied down. So if you get aerobically warm, you can do anything. You know, jump rope, run, walk, swim, whatever. But if you need to be perspiring, so the blood vessel dilates, and now the systemic vascular resistance has decreased, and your heart will push into a lower resistance, and you'll help your heart. You'll find that a lot of cardiologists will tell you, don't lift weights, because what it'll do is it'll drive your pressure up. And that's true. You'll see a bump, both systolic and more of the diastolic pressure, because that lifting, if not done properly, causes a real problem. When you lift, you start with the big muscles, and then you lose the small muscles. And the reason for that is that in order to stress the big muscle and then create microscopic tears, you have to use the little muscles to stabilize that movement. So when you actually learn to do this, you want to go and talk to a person who does lift weights, so you have the proper technique, and you don't hurt yourself. But you start with the big muscles, the pecs and the chest, back muscles, the big latissimus dorsi, the legs, the quadriceps, the hamstrings, and then the abdominal muscles, the core muscles. Because, you know, not only the transverse abdominis, but also the rectus abdominis you really want to have. When you do the small muscles, you can do, you know, you do it after all the big muscles, the front and back of the arms, shoulders. There are a lot of, there are 4 muscles in the shoulder that comprise the rotator cuff, the so-called sits muscles. And so you have to use weights to actually build that so you actually can stabilize your shoulder. We see that a lot. Calves and forearms are getting smaller. There are certain muscles, one of the elder friends has taught me this. There are certain muscles you need when you get older. You have to have these muscles. Otherwise, you're really in trouble. The thigh muscles are needed, quads and hamstrings, so you can get in and out of a chair. You can get in and off, you know, the loo. You can get, you know, get about up and down stairs. You need muscles in your abdomen, so that if you have a bed, a real soft bed, in order to get out of bed, you have to have the abdominal strength to sit up and roll over. Otherwise, you're going to have somebody pull you out of bed, and that's a real thing. You need legs. You need leg muscles to help with what's called balance. When I was practicing internal medicine, I used to have people who would have a stroke and they'd come back and say, see, I've lost my balance. And so I test them neurologically, and, you know, all the neurologic tests were perfectly intact. But what I found is that they didn't have enough strength. They couldn't stand on one leg. And the other thing is that if they started to fall, they wouldn't have enough strength to catch themselves and then pop themselves back up in the air. So what I found, and I told Patsy and Terry this, if you can skip, remember how you skip when you're a youngster, you skip with one leg and catch yourself? If you can skip, that means you can catch and control all of your weight on one leg. So if you stumble and start to go down, you have the strength to pop yourself up in the air and catch yourself. So if you can skip, then you will probably maintain your balance. And Mel tells me that he can skip, and Terry tells me he can skip. But you find that a lot of people who say they're losing their balance really have lost the strength in those muscles in the leg that does not allow themselves to control them. So you need strength in your legs. And then the other thing is that you need strength in your upper body, a little strength in your arms. So if you fall on the floor, you can gather yourself and get your legs behind underneath you so you can get up. And Ed, my friend, says, these are 3 muscles that you have to have just to survive as you go older. So the other rule, the real key to lifting weights is that you need to slow this lengthening phase of them, slow down the lift. The other thing I find is really important is that you don't want to waste time when you're actually lifting weights by waiting for the second set. So you do a set of 10 or 12, don't sit there waiting for the next set. That's a total waste of time. Go and do a different muscle. So you do like an upper body, you know, say for your chest, and do a leg. You do a set of 12 and you walk over and do the next set. And then you rotate between 2 of them. And that saves you a whole heck of a lot of time. It really cuts your workout program almost in half. So that's what's called superset. We just keep moving all the way along. And you set, 3 sets of 10. That's the minimum that you want to do. But you can do 3 sets of 12 or 15, whatever you do, so that your muscle doesn't fatigue too much. And the efficiency of doing this is really key to actually continuing doing it. Now, when you do 3 sets of 12 or 3 sets of 15, and you don't get that delayed onset of muscle soreness, then you know you're not growing muscle. Now you bump your weight up, and that's how you can actually figure out what weight you can use. So you really want to covet this delayed onset of muscle soreness, because that's telling you that you're building strength back, and it's going to really help you a lot. And that comes back within a week or 2 weeks. It's amazing how fast that strength comes back, because you'll feel the ache, and then you find, geez, the amount of weight you can actually lift is much, much bigger, and you will feel that change in strength. How often do you need to do this? This is really key. Do not do it more than twice a week. I repeat that. Do not do this more than twice a week. So the only time you work on strength is twice a week. The rest of the time you can do all the aerobic and endurance activity you want. So what I would tell people is that the endurance stuff is something you want to do. This weightlifting is something you have to do so you can continue to do what you want to do. And that's why this thing is. So only do it twice a week. If you do it efficiently, it's amazing. So if you do it once a week, you will maintain your strength. If you do it twice a week, separated by 3 or 4 days, you will build your strength. I'll show you how to do it pretty rapidly. If you're not doing it now, don't worry, because you're not doing it now anyway, so it doesn't make any difference. So, you know, just twice a week. And if you miss a session, or you go on a trip and you don't do it, don't even worry, because you just start back once or twice a week, and you're back. And it'll come back really quickly. It's like a sawtooth. And I've noticed this when I was practicing. When people go into a hospital, say you have a kid comes in and say they break an ankle, they go in, they get casted, and they don't use that muscle for a while. Geez, they come back really quickly. Or they have an appendectomy and they come back really quickly. And you get in your 30s and 40s, and you have a gallbladder surgery, and geez, it comes back a little longer, 2 or 3, 4 weeks. 60s, 70s, sometimes they never come back, because they've lost so much strength that they can't do what they were doing before they went to the hospital. And that's why I noticed that the resumption of strength, or repletion of strength, is really important. So how long do you do it? I think the goal is to actually get this whole session door to door, actually doing resistance work, down to 1 hour. If you can get 1 hour, that means that for 2 hours of work and building your strength, you'll get back, let's say 15 hours. And that 15 hours, between the time of dinner and bedtime, that's, say, 3 hours, from 7 to 10. And if you're like a 30 or 40-year-old and you've got a family, I mean, that's 3 hours. Just during the week, that's 15 hours. So for 2 hours of exertion, separated by 3 or 4 days, or 2 hours of exertion, you can get 15 hours of return. And to me, that's great efficiency. Now, again, you look for that muscle ache 2 days later, that delayed onset of muscle soreness. That's telling you you're getting strength. So how much do you start with? Well, you start low. You start, you may not have that delayed onset with a slow negative. And you look for that to see how you can build that strength. It actually comes back fairly quickly. My problem, I was teaching this to a couple of older guys. Well, one guy was 50. But the other guy, when we did it, he didn't feel anything while doing the work, so we kept pushing the weight up, and he ended up with a hernia. So that didn't work good. And then his son-in-law came, and we were working on it, and he was doing the leg press, and he just didn't feel like he was doing anything, because he didn't wait for the delayed onset of soreness. And he got a hemorrhoid. That was even worse. So the whole goal is to keep it really short and sweet. So again, the summary here: always warm up before and sweat. The slow down is really key to doing these exercises. You stress the big muscles first, then the little muscles, and try to superset and get it really efficient. And then when you're done, you do the hoochie coochie. I'm gonna have to explain what that is. And then that's how you live. Yeah. So again, for balance, control, can you skip? And the last time we did this, and Terry and Patsy can tell you that in Reno, all the guys were out there trying to skip it. It was so much fun. I think everybody could. So, but the benefits of everything, it really helps overall. Housework, which Betsy will tell you that I'm not really much for housework, but traveling much fun. Playing tennis is great, and dancing. Get dancing. messing around is even a consideration. And you're right, if you're strong, you're alive. So here's a case of this guy here. This is the guy I'm working with. When he's 74, his granddaughter was getting married out here in Colina. And so we were kind of coming with him. And so we're going to tour, Oahu. But Ed couldn't stand on one leg. He couldn't stand on one leg for more than 5 to 10 seconds. And he was really weak. When he was working in the yard, he'd get really tired. So we put him on this weightlifting program. You can see here, he started in this weightlifting program. That's 20 pounds. Doing it only twice a week. After a month, he was doing 90-pound weightlifting. After a year, he's doing 270-pound weightlifting. When he turned 81, he could do 600-pound weightlifting. Slow. And the weight was not as impressive as a change in the quality of his life. Now he is able to work in the yard without having to take 2 days to recover. He can travel and enjoy traveling. He can go out to dinner. He's much more active. And that's where the proof is real. And so he's got his, you can see here, that's a lot of weight. But he can control it. And he has strength enough that, he can skip. And he'd go up ladders. Faye, his wife, used to just really rail at him whenever he got on the rope. He said, "You can't be up there, you're not very stable." And so he used to go up, what's called old man style. Up, like that. Once he got this strength, and he had enough strength in each leg, he could go up to the way he did in his 40s and 50s, one leg at a time. And he was much more stable. And then, so he got his wife to it. And this lady, she's about 4'11", maybe 83 pounds. And you can see that that's 170 pounds, 160 pounds. She does it 3 times. But the really interesting part of that is not so much the weight she has. Look at her arms. These guns are amazing. She's got huge guns. She could take a 10-pound weight and curl a 10-pound weight. And her daughter was in the house and said, "Hey, Dad, who's that 10-pound weight there? That's a lot of weight." He said, "No, that's not for me. That's for your mother." But you can see there's no jiggle in that arm because she's doing the work. It's actually a low pull down to do that and pull to the side and slowly bring it back. You can see her triceps are very formed. She's much stronger. And by doing the work in the upper body, what she has also noticed is that a lot of things around, the kitchen, like working up above you or actually opening bottles. When you lift weights, you inadvertently develop hand strength because you have to hang on to that weight. So it really helps you in many other things. So the initial recipe, always warm up, superset, we'll do 2 exercises Sunday. It's better with a partner. If you go with a partner, you can do it and you can switch. So you can occupy two machines at once. And it's really much more efficient. And the goal is to try to keep it under an hour. And I've actually tried to devise a half-an-hour program. So on the days when you don't have a full hour, you just go in, door to door, you go in and do the big muscles and things you can't do at home. And then you keep maintaining your strength. So you do big muscles, chest and thighs, upper back, lower back, the arms, one. And then what you do is a hoochie-coochie. And this comes, what I try to do is find a dance where you would put together all these little muscles. So what I did is I grab onto a weight like just a little handheld free weight. Well, 3, 5, 7, 8, 10 pounds, whatever. And then I want you to go through a whole series of exercises so you stress all the little muscles. So what I would do is we'd have these 2 weights and you do a front lunge and then you do with a front raise. So you do, what you're trying to do are compound exercises. So you do 2 exercises at the same time. So you do a forward lunge, so here, and then you do a front raise, and then you slowly lower. Then you do a lunge with the other leg, and you do it up 45 degrees for the middle deltoid, and you slowly go down. Then you do it on the side, and then you bend over, and you do the side raise, and then you do a back roll, and with a kickback for the triceps, and then also for the low trapezius. And then what you do is we would do toe raises. So you can see it, but get up on your toes and slowly go back down. And you do it in 3 positions for the different parts of your calf. And then you can pull the weight up into here for your trapezius, here. And then what we do is we do a curl, overhead press, and then you bring it down and do a reverse curl. And then you do the hoochie coochie. And that's the name that they gave the dog because they thought, they remember the hokey pokey, remember? Put the right foot in, but they call it a hoochie coochie. So these are the, and you can do it in a gym or you can do it at home. When you do it in the gym, for the chest, you do a bench press. At home, you can do this by doing just a push-up. You can do, you start on your knees or whatever, and so you can just graduate weight. And the key to this is, which part of it needs to be slow? It's when you go down. And very few people will go down slowly on the push-up. But that's where you actually build the strength. The leg press, it's great to do it in the gym, but you can do a wall squat where you put your back against the wall, your legs out about a foot, and then slowly go back down. Or you can do a lunge and go down slowly. And sometimes that's a little more easier to do because you can grab onto something, and as you go down, if you can't get up very quick, you can pull on it and help yourself up. Then what you do for the upper back, you can do the lat pull downs. It's hard to figure out how to do that at home, but in some way of actually pulling on something, so you build these big dorsal muscles, which are really fairly big. And we used to do pull-ups, but that requires you to pull all your weight up, and that's too much of a, too much of a jump. It's hard to actually get up there really quickly. Lower back extensions when you pull up, or if you do a Superman exercise where you lie on your tummy, and you put your arms and legs out, and then slowly raise your back. You're trying to build the paraspinous muscles in your low back. And again, you come back down slowly. There's an extension device in the gym where you kind of put your tummy on or your abdomen on that, and you lean forward and then come back up. And so that's one of the things you do. When you do abdominals, you can do a slant board sit-ups or crunches. And again, go back down slowly. The interesting thing about doing the crunch is that there's a difference between inhaling and exhaling when you do that. If you exhale and actually do a crunch, you actually build the transverse abdominis, which is in the core. If you inhale and then do this, come up and go back down, you actually build the rectus, which is the six-pack. So it depends on what you're after. If you want a six-pack and you're hell bent on having a six-pack, then you inhale and come up. But by and large, if you exhale, it'll help you with your core. And that's what you get in Pilates. And I don't know if maybe Cindy's friends in Tai Chi, that's what we do. And then for farm arms, it's curls. And a can of Spam works really good. For the back of the arms, the triceps, you can do chair dips, back like that on the back of the arm. But if you're in the gym, you have that rope that bends, you can pull the rope down and pull it to the side, and that helps you with your trapezius, your triceps, including the lateral triceps, which is very, very helpful. Yep, stay along, stay strong. So that's what that talks about. So now, yeah.
Dispel the myth that women who lift weight going to look like a bodybuilder.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. What Mel asked was, dispel the myth that women who are going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And that's because in men, the testosterone levels are so much higher that they have that much more defined. With the estrogen, yeah, you won't get that. And the key is actually, when you get older, if you're 95 and you look like Arnold, that's not bad because you probably function like Arnold, but you don't want to look like that. The estrogen tempers that. That isn't.
Plus, they all take steroids.
Yeah, well, you can see the women who do take steroids, and some of the bodybuilding magazines, the ones that do take steroids, I mean, they really look like men. Even Caitlin. It's okay. So I'm going to take a moment here and actually move to a different area.
You want to play that?
Thank you, Daddy. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about completely different. If you want to get up and stretch or
Bathroom break?
bathroom break or whatever, yeah. Yeah. I'm going to talk about type 2 diabetes in a second. If you want to go bathroom, come back. I'll take a second. Any questions? Yeah, that's right. You're right. You're right. I know. You see the women? But it's really how strong you are.
See what you guys
I'm sorry. It was just a little definition.
Hello.
Hello? It's kind of hard to hear, you know. We're in Hawaii. Time is different. Okay, no, it's my mistake. But I'd like you to all meet our senior pastor, who allowed us to have this room. Pick up and stop. Because I did want to.
Remember.
Okay.
Yes.
Now you know him.
Yes, I saw him. I recognized him.
You do?
But because he was the one who presided over all the authors.
He knows you.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So
So it's just intermission, okay?
yeah, yeah.
Do you have any printed information of exercises?
Yeah. I have a little bit, but not. Yeah. I'm trying to write a book about it, but I don't have it out yet. But I've got a little sheet about how to initially start with that. Let me help you.
So you do have a printed?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So now what I'm going to do is talk about type 2 diabetes. And diabetes is really quite epidemic. Just read a report. Can you hear that? Is it better? Can you hear? Okay. So type 2 diabetes is really almost an epidemic proportion. Just read a report out of the Journal of American Medical Association that 35% of the population in the United States has what we call pre-diabetes. And diabetes itself represents about 12 to 14% of the population. So that means that of the population in the United States today, almost a half of the population has diabetes in some form. And so I've been working at our clinical trial center. We do a lot of work with diabetes. And so I've come up with these ideas that are very different from what you'll normally hear about diabetes. And I've been able to give this talk to the diabetes educators of California on 2 occasions with fairly good response. I mean, it's really very good. And the key to understanding diabetes is to understand this concept here. This is a concept I'm going to show you and talk to you about. And that's the idea that you have to make room for the sugar in the bloodstream. That's the key to actually dealing with type 2 diabetes. So what is diabetes? What is a change and alteration in the way we actually understand the movement of sugar, and in particular glucose? So I'm going to do with you what I do with the new diabetics, or the diabetics who come to our center. And that's to try to understand, like, where does glucose come from? And so we talk about glucose getting into the bloodstream and then glucose getting out of the bloodstream. And so what I'm going to do is review that with you. And is glucose movement different in a diabetic than it is in a non-diabetic? And I'm going to argue that it is not. So let me ask you. I ask this to all diabetics to say, how do you get sugar or glucose into the bloodstream? And the answer is? You eat it, right? Right? Let me say, yeah. And sometimes I get real looks like, yeah, are you crazy? You get it by food. And it's really the carbohydrates. The simple carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates get converted into glucose. That's the primary compound. So you have simple carbohydrates, like glucose, fructose, and galactose. Those are the simple sugars. And then you have the double sugars. In table sugar, it's glucose and fructose. Lactose is really glucose and galactose. And maltose, which it's really hard to find, is really the breakdown product of all the starches. That's a double glucose one. These are disaccharides, and they're really important. That's how you get the sugar from the food. The complex carbohydrates is a little more difficult to understand. The lentils, quinoa, bulgur, brown rice, which Betsy tries to get me to eat, whole grains, and then what I call the great whites, all the good stuff. You know, the rice, the potato mac, the tortillas, rice, pasta. These are all the really good stuff. So that's where you get sugar into the bloodstream. But where else do you get glucose to put into the bloodstream? Where are the supplies for sugar that are stored in the body that a person accesses and puts sugar into the bloodstream? Any guesses? Any thoughts? Where are the body's stores of glycogen or glucose from which we gather that glucose and put it back in the bloodstream? Liver. Your liver stores glycogen, which is a multiple glucose. And what the body does is it chops off them like a Lego and puts that glucose into the bloodstream. And you do it with 4 hormones. Glucagon for the alpha cell in the pancreas. And probably the most powerful compound to do that. And that's what you see in type 1 diabetics, where they have this little pen that has glucagon in it. You pound that into your thigh, and it drives the sugar. Adrenaline will do that, and probably by increasing the glucagon production from the alpha cell. And that's what gives rise to all the symptoms that a person has when they have hypoglycemic episodes, if you know any type 1 diabetics, or type 2 diabetics that don't have any beta cells. Long term, cortisol, which is a steroid from the adrenal gland, actually causes that increase through a different mechanism. And growth hormone, and that's why kids and adolescents have a hard time, because the growth hormone actually drives more sugar out of the liver. So that's how you get sugar into the bloodstream, either from the food, simple or complex carbohydrates, or from the liver with those primarily glucagon and adrenaline. So once it comes in out of the bloodstream, where does it go? Well, it goes to every cell. Every cell needs sugar for energy. But where does glucose go to get stored? Where are the big stores of glucose? Well, the first thing you would say is liver. You have some in the liver. Bingo, right. She said muscle, yeah. So all cells need, but the biggest store of sugar, muscles. Muscles have a lot more sugar than the liver. The liver has about 100 grams of sugar stored as glycogen. But muscles have 400 to 500 times, or 400 to 500 grams. That is 4 to 5 times more sugar is stored in the muscle. Why? You need it for the fight or flight reaction. So when Pteranodon, or Tyrannosaurus Rex took off after us, you had to have that sugar. Otherwise you were food. And so that got out of the gene. So you needed to have that. So now that led to the next question of learning about this. That doesn't make any sense. If the biggest stores of sugar are in your muscles, why can't we access that store in the muscle to deal with the low sugar? Because we know we get that from the liver. Why can't we get it from the muscle? This is what I used to tell my kids. Cause. That's the answer. Cause. That's all you need no more. The reason you can't get it out of muscle, human muscles don't have the enzyme that allows you to go from glycogen to glucose and get it out of the muscle. So it's stuck in the muscle. You put it into the muscle, it's stuck there. You have to get it, if you want sugar in your bloodstream, you have to get it out of your liver. And it's because you lack, this is for those of the biochemistry, like Jerry, the muscles lack glucose 6-phosphatase, the enzyme that breaks down glucose 6-phosphate, takes off the phosphate group and allows that glucose to come out of the muscle. And that's something we learned in the first class of biochemistry, which we promptly forget until you have to deal with it in diabetes. It's like, what the heck, why did I forget that? But that's why you can't get the sugar out of the muscle. You don't have glucose 6-phosphate. It leads to interesting issues. That means that your muscles are one-way storehouses for sugar. You can put sugar into your muscle, you can't get back out. You have to use your muscles to get the sugar out. And that's by using your muscles and making room for sugar, that's how you get the sugar out of the muscle. So the exercise decreases the stores in the muscle, and that makes room for the sugar from the blood. So you need to exercise to make room for sugar. This is the real key to actually dealing with diabetes. This is why you exercise. You don't exercise because we told you, but you exercise because this is what it's doing. And so the idea is you have to use your muscles. So the idea is make it fun. Do something you enjoy doing. Either walk, run, bike. The real cool one, shopping. Because you're walking around Alamo Shopping Center. I'm doing this for my diabetes. It all adds up. You just have to use your muscles. Thank
you.
Well, you do it for your diabetes. But wonderful. And it does affect the making room for sugar. It does affect the way sugar flows through the muscle. You really have to, deplete those muscle stores in the muscle. And the interesting thing is that biochemically, your muscles are the first organs that take up all the sugar. They get first crack at all of the sugar. And that's just the biochemical nature of the enzyme that allows it to pull it in. It does that at a rate that's 10 to 15 times lower than what goes into the liver and into the fat cell. And for those of you thinking about it, it's interesting. I haven't talked about the fat cell, so that's really interesting. What does insulin do? You hear people using insulin. Well, insulin facilitates the flow of sugar into cells. It allows for the flow. It's what we call, it allows for facilitated diffusion of sugar into cells. And importantly, it does not actively drive sugar into cells. It allows the sugar to go into cells, but it doesn't drive sugar into cells. There's an important concept actually in understanding how sugar moves, especially you'll see that in type 1 diabetes as well. The interesting thing about a muscle is that when it fills up with sugar, if that muscle is saturated, it's stored. And it can do that because the enzyme can be saturated. Where does the blood sugar have to go? Well, it has nowhere to go. It stays in the blood. And that's what causes the high sugars or hypoglycemia. So the question I had, even if you have as much insulin as you want and make as many openings as you need, if there's no room for that sugar to go into the muscle, it stays in the bloodstream. So if the muscle's full of sugar and it's maxed out and saturated, then all the insulin in the world won't work. And the insulin is what we call ineffective, or what the endocrinologists call insulin resistant. So the muscles are stored full. Is that what insulin resistance is all about? And that is a concept you don't hear in medicine, because the endocrinologists don't know. They think it's all because of fat. So this is a new concept that hasn't been presented before. The interesting thing is, if sugar stays high, because of the receptors it works on, it actually induces the cells to not work well. So people who have high sugars constantly, their cells are not working at full efficiency. They may be working at 50, 60, 70% of maximum. So people feel poorer, they don't feel well. And it's because of the high sugars. And if you talk to a diabetic, they'll tell you, when my sugars go high, I feel like crap. But when they get lower, it takes a while, but then the body begins to work a little better. One of the interesting things you need to know is that we describe two different kinds of diabetes, type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And the things you need to know is type 2 diabetes, which is the majority, is not type 1 diabetes. They are very different diseases. And that's not often stated, so that's why I put that in. Type 2 diabetes is not type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is an output problem because you've killed your beta cells, so you don't have any insulin and something called amylin from your beta cells, because you've lost your beta cells. Type 2 diabetes, on the other hand, is an excessive input of sugar. Very, very different. Type 2 diabetes is not insulin and sugar. And you may not hear that from anyone else. It is not primarily insulin sugar. In type 1 diabetes, the immune system comes in through cytokines and it kills beta cells. So you lose products of the insulin, the pro-insulin compound. So you lose insulin and something called amylin, which is something you may have heard of and most people have not. But it's a compound that is not insulin, that is also secreted from beta cells. So this slows, without the insulin, it's hard for the sugar to go from the blood into cells. So it's an output problem. You can't get the sugar out of the bloodstream. Type 2 diabetes, on the other hand, is very, very different. This is a genetically based disease where you genetically almost double the amount of sugar that goes into the bloodstream after you eat. So it's an input problem, an excessive input problem. Of the diabetics in the world, and we think we're going to have at least 318 million diabetics by 2018 in the world. Of these diabetics, type 1 diabetics represent 6 to 8% of all these diabetics. So that means that type 2 diabetes represents anywhere from 92 to 94% of all the diabetics in the world, of these 318 million, are type 2 diabetes, an input problem. But the real problem is that we still treat the type 2 diabetics as type 1 diabetics, but thinking it's insulin, and it's not. And that's why we're having a problem with treating diabetes. So if type 2 diabetes is not insulin sugar, what does it cause? What is the reason, what's the pathogenesis of type 2 diabetes? It is genetic. And so when you, genetically, what do you lose? So let me go back to the definition of diabetes that we have in 2014, this is a diabetes care from the American Diabetes Association. The different ways you decide whether you're a diabetic is that you have impaired glucose tolerance. That if we give you a 75-gram glucose tablet, an hour and 2 hours after that meal, your sugar levels are above 200 milligrams per cent. Initially, your fasting sugar needed to be above 126 on 2 different occasions. That's the morning sugar. It had to be above 126. And at that time, you were designated as a diabetic. Recently, they've added the change in the hemoglobin A1C, which is the average sugar over a period of about 3 months. And if your hemoglobin A1C is above 6.5%, then you're considered a diabetic. Normally, it's at 5.7%. That's the amount of hemoglobin that has sugar coating around it. If you have a random sugar of over 200 and you have symptoms of hypoglycemia, like excessive urination, dehydration, blurred vision, and you feel cruddy, that's another diagnostic criteria. So here's some work from, this is from David Kendall, where what he did is he put together what we thought was the natural progression of type 2 diabetes. And what you're looking at is either the glucose level here in milligrams per cent, or here the relative function, along here time in years. And at this red line here, that's the onset of diabetes, at time 0, year 0. And what you will notice is that the pre-diabetic stage, before you're diagnosed with diabetes, represents about 5 to 15 years a year. And then you can see here the progression. So what happens here is the fasting sugar slowly increases. And when you get to 126 on 2 occasions, you're a diabetic. The interesting thing is this is the after the meal sugar. And this actually should go up a little faster because in the impaired glucose tolerance area, the sugar level is much higher right after the meal. You begin to develop insulin resistance, really, I think because your muscles fill up. And here you can see the insulin, you actually increase the insulin early on. What happens is then you kill beta cells and then it starts to fall off. And then as you go along, they've always thought that type 2 diabetes is a progressive disease, just inexorably lose them. We're now beginning to find out that's not true. So again, we're looking at the same type of scale where you're looking at function here and years of diagnosis. This is the time of diagnosis, and what you see is here you build up insulin resistance. The amount of insulin secreted actually in beta cell function actually increases, so you actually produce more insulin. You're losing cells, but each cell produces more insulin. And so you have an increase in insulin secretion, and then you get to a point where it starts to fall, and then that's what really prompts the onset of true type 2 diabetes. But in this period here, in the pre-diabetic stage of 5 to 15 years, look at what happens. You can lose up to 80% of the beta cells. So we're waiting in medicine, we're waiting until you lose 80% of your beta cells before we begin treating you. And I challenge the diabetes educators in California to say, we're waiting too long. We need to get in early and treat this pre-diabetes, because this is when you're losing on your cells. But we in medicine have chosen to wait, and that's not helping us. And so what happens is this thing I'm going to talk about in a little bit, which is this thing called an incretin. And that's a compound that you begin to lose with time that's genetically based. I'm going to explain what an incretin is in a few minutes. So associated with this is a simple kind of plot, relative risk for heart disease over years. And here's the time of diagnosis. You can see it builds in the pre-diabetic state. Interestingly, at the time of diagnosis, your risk of cardiovascular disease has doubled. And the reason we chose these diagnostic criteria is that we've noticed that from the DTCC, the study on meta-analysis, a big study, we noticed that the microvascular, small vessel disease, begins to start at that 126 level. That's why it was chosen in 1978. It was almost arbitrarily chosen because there's an increase in microvascular, small vessel disease. So again, we go back to the type 2 diabetes. And this is impaired glucose tolerance, where we give you 75 grams of sugar, and so those women who had, childbirth, they do that gestational diabetes as assay, where they give you the sugar. It's the same kind of things. And you're looking at over 200 an hour and 2 hours after the meal. Again, fasting sugar, the A1C, or the hypoglycemic symptoms. So this is taken from Tina Visbald's paper with a little bit of autistic license. So here, what happens after 75 grams? You get above 200 milligrams per cent an hour and 2 hours after the meal. How high does it get in a non-diabetic? It never gets above 140. So this is the difference in type 2 diabetes, where you have an excessive input. And it almost doubles, because this level will go up closer to 300. So the easiest way to look at this, which makes sense to a lot of diabetics, is that your sugar almost doubles after a meal compared to a non-diabetic. That's an interesting concept, because that means that as a diabetic, you double down on everything you eat. Now that's an interesting concept. So for every bowl of rice you have, that's like having 2 bowls of rice. For a Big Mac fries and a Coke, that's like having 2 Big Macs, 2 fries, and 2 Cokes at the same time. And for our Latina community, when you have 4 tortillas, it's like having 8 tortillas at the same time. That's a heck of a load. And that's why it's so difficult to deal with. It's an excessive input problem. So what do you do with that extra? What does a diabetic do with that extra sugar? Because there's twice as much. What do you do with everybody does with extra sugar? You store it. So that means type 2 diabetes, your diabetes is what causes the weight to come up, especially in the pre-diabetic. So for those who are diabetic, you notice that in 5 to 15 years before you're diagnosed diabetic, your weight slowly comes up. It used to be thought that obesity caused diabetes. That's because they weren't thinking about this. It's backwards. The diabetes is what causes the weight to come up. And I've had more than a half a dozen people cry when they heard that, the diabetics, because they had this tremendous amount of guilt. I actually had a patent lawyer who said he wouldn't tell his mother he had diabetes because he was worried that she would think he didn't have the discipline to be able to control his diet. And so that was amazing. So what happens with what causes this excessive input in diabetes? This is really cool. So this is work from Mueller. Actually, this is in 1970, a long time ago. What he did here is he took these are 14 healthy people. And what he did is he just pumped some sugar into them. And then here. And what happens is he monitored insulin, glucagon, that agent that actually drives sugar out of the liver, and then glucose. And this is over time, minutes, and this is an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours out. Notice what happens. Your sugar level goes up, well, again, below 140. Your insulin level bumps up to deal with that sugar. And the glucagon, which is on your alpha cell, drops, which makes sense. You don't need more sugar, so it drops. Then what he did is he took 12 diabetics, type 2 diabetics. And what happens is if you give the sugar, now the sugar level is much higher. Look at the insulin. It goes up a little bit, but not a whole lot. But the key to diabetes, type 2 diabetes, is this distinction here. Look what happens to the glucagon. After you eat sugar, your glucagon increases in a type 2 diabetic. In a non-diabetic, it goes down as it should. So that means that here, with this increase in glucagon after a meal, you're going to drive more sugar out of the liver. That's why you double your sugar. That's what causes that type 2 diabetes. That's where the problem is. It's an excessive input problem. And why does this happen? Because of these compounds called incretins. You genetically lose these compounds. Now, this is a little complex. Just hang with me. In type 2 diabetes, you genetically lose the production of these two compounds, the incretins, GLP-1 and GLP. What do they do? These incretins actually decrease the amount of glucagon after a meal. So if you lose that compound, then after a meal, your glucagon increases, which is what that problem is. And therefore, your sugar after the meal increases your glucagon. So in type 2 diabetes, you get too much glucose into your bloodstream after a meal. The GLP-1s, they do a couple things. They decrease glucagon after a meal. They slow the rate of emptying of the stomach, and they hit the satiety center so you actually get full faster. And GIP does that too. It's a different part of the intestine. But these two compounds, collectively known as incretins, actually are what cause the production of diabetes. And now when we're doing it, when we're testing it at a clinical trial center, when we give these GLP-1s back, we have a tremendous response in the diabetes. We can almost eliminate the diabetes. And you can see we do work in obesity as well. And we see a lot of pre-diabetics who come in because they're getting bigger. And when we give them the type 2 diabetes, GLP-1, they drop their weight because they actually restore that sugar level after a meal. So what are the goals if you have type 2 diabetes? Is that, your docs in the medical profession will always tell you, you got to lose weight. But I'm going to say to you, that's not really a legitimate goal. In order for you to lose 1 gram of fat, you have to burn 9 calories. To burn 1 gram of sugar, you only need 4. That means you have to work more than twice as hard compared to a non-diabetic. Couple that with the fact that a type 2 diabetic doubles your input, that means that you have to work more than 4 times harder than a non-diabetic to lose the weight. I can honestly tell you, I can't do that. So why would I posit that to you? I don't think it's a legitimate goal in a type 2 diabetic. When you look at the way the sugar is controlled, here is, you get the sugar in from the stomach or from the liver, and it continually comes out of the liver on a basal basis. And it goes in really into muscles. And the insulin is what helps it go there. The amylin, the other compound from the beta cell, actually does 3 things. It slows the emptying of the stomach, it hits the satiety center, but more importantly, it decreases glucagon production. These GLP-1s, GIP also, the incretins, do exactly the same thing as amylin does. It slows the glucagon production, it slows the emptying of the stomach, and it actually decreases your, or increases your appetite. You don't want to eat anymore. So how can you decrease the after the meal glucagon in a type 2 diabetic? You need these compounds, incretins, both GLP-1 and GIP. And we've been testing a lot of it. These are the currently available GLP-1s. The first one we have is Byetta, which in 2005 was produced. It's given twice a day, sub-Q, and that's when we first saw the weight loss. And that's what prompted us to understand that that's how the weight and diabetes were related. Victoza from Novo Nordisk actually is given once a day, and the maximum dose is 1.8 grams. Bydureon is a once-a-week shot, and we actually have a little tube where they actually put the tube up your skin, and it stays there for 6 months to a year, and they're looking at a 2-year little device that's moving on. Then Tanzim is brand new, that once a week, dulaglutide again, once a week. And this one's once a day, and we haven't used much of that. So the other way we treat it, the common way of treating it is to use metformin. And metformin is commonly given, even pre-diabetics, it works fairly well. And we learned from Jans Holst that, about 5 years ago, he suggested that what it does is it increases the secretion of GLP-1 from the intestine, where it's only stored. But you need enough of a dose to actually increase that secretion. So you really need to get up, as much as you can, you need to get up to 1,500 milligrams, which is 3 500 milligram tablets, or you can go up to 2,500 as a max, so either 2,000 milligram tablets. When the GLP-1 is released from the intestine, there's a compound that breaks it down within a minute and a half. And that it's called dipeptidopeptidase. And those are ubiquitous. And so what it does is we actually produce inhibitors, and one you may know is Januvia, which is sitagliptin, at a dose of 100 to 150 milligrams. Tradenta is ribitol, we do lanagliptin, these gliptins, and saxagliptin or Eliza, just recently reported. Algliptin has not been out very long. But these agents prolong the life of the GLP-1 in the intestine and actually work fairly well. So the combination of Januvia, metformin, Genumet seems to work really well, especially in the pre-diabetics or early diabetics. It works really well. One of the early treatments, and it's one that I used to use when I was practicing decades ago, is sulfonylureas. You may know this. Diabeta, glyburide, glyburide, micronase, diagonase, and now amyl glyburide. These agents are really bad agents because of the way they work. If you're using a sulfonylurea like this, any of these, you might as well be giving yourself more sugar, because what they're trying to do, what medicine tried to do with it, is they're known to actually try to increase the amount of insulin, because they used to think that diabetes was all insulin and sugar. But in the process of doing that, you actually have to depolarize the beta cell. And so these receptors occur on other cells, including the atria, the brain, blood vessels, and the liver. And when you give those sulfonylurea, those other cells get depolarized as well, so your body doesn't work as well. So sulfonylureas are really bad agents. And because I'm not on the practice of medicine, I can tell you that. None of my practicing colleagues will actually want to tell you that. Some of the older tests, we use thioglutamate. These are agents actually, the one you would know would be active thioglutamate. What that does is it drives the sugar into the fat cell, perforation. So it looks like your blood sugar is low, but you're building your fat cell. When we did studies with ultrasound, we learned when we gave pyroglitazone, the fat cell layer grew. And so that's how we know we put in the sugar. The alpha glucosidase inhibitors are ones that help keep the sugar from breaking down. But you get them to large intestine, you get a lot of gas, and they're really uncomfortable. Most people don't use them. But when you hear about a diet and exercise, there you decrease input and you make more room for sugar with exercise, and you lower the amount of sugar in the bloodstream. But it doesn't cure your diabetes. You need to deal with the increment. One of the newer compounds that we're still studying is called sodium glucose transporter, that's a co-transporter type 2. And this agent actually helps you pee the extra sugar out. It's really an interesting compound that we've been looking at in the last couple of years. So what you do is, normally in a non-diabetic, you pee out everything over 180 milligrams per cent. In a diabetic, it goes up to 200 and 240, and then you start peeing. With this SGLT2, you lower that down to 70 to 90, but it comes out of your kidney. So I call it the sweet pea studies, because you pee all the sugar out of your kidney. And it seems to work very well. And when you see some ads for this, Farzega, you see the ones for Invocana, or Canafloza, and some of these others brand new. In fact, Etroglyphosate doesn't have a name yet, but we've been using that. And we've actually been using it in type 2 and type 1 diabetes as well, to try to get more sugar out. So it's really quite interesting. So the take-home messages from this: type 2 diabetes doubles your sugar after a meal. Your diabetes is what causes the weight gain. Losing weight as a diabetic is really not a legitimate goal. And then type 2 diabetes involves excessive glucagon and insulin and sugar. And you really need increments. That's where your body revolves in. But the key to our diabetes, you need to make room for sugar. These are the people we're working with. That's it. Thanks. Well, you're losing your interest amount. You can still, diet and exercise really help. You can get the sugar out, so but if you really want to change it, you have to get something that changes your GLP-1 production. Metformin, and Januvia. If you want to get your GLP-1. But the exercise, it really helps hold it down initially. Yeah. And you can only eat so many bowls of rice. And it's not the cow yolk.
The diet doesn't help.
It does, because you double your diet. Right?
Yeah.
So the difference is, we used to tell people, don't eat this, don't eat that. Now it's, you eat what you want. You just recognize that whatever you eat, you double your carbohydrates. So if you have a bowl of spaghetti, fine, enjoy it, right? But you're going to double that sugar from the spaghetti. So, if you really like it, don't have 2 plates of spaghetti, because now you're looking at 4 plates of amounts of sugar. So it's different in terms of the attitude with which we're actually working with diabetics is complaint changed dramatically. Because now we're giving the diabetics the responsibility of having to deal with it. Any other question? It's really different, yeah. Last time in Reno, after I talked to Terry and Patsy and the gang, we had all 25 people or 10 dozen people outside trying to skip. It was really funny, trying to exercise.
I haven't tried it. I should try it. So like when you eat fruit,
Yeah.
the fructose converts to glucose.
Yeah. Joyce raised an interesting question. She says, how about fructose? And the interesting thing about fructose, and the reason it's so difficult, is that fructose gets the question is, Joyce, my sister-in-law, raised an interesting question. She says, how about fructose? Why is fructose so difficult? And the reason is, fructose is converted into glucose in one enzymatic step as soon as it gets into the liver. But the problem is, your satiety center is it's in the nucleus accumbens in the brain. And what happens is, that's sensitive to glucose. And so, you don't get full eating fructose. So you continue to eat fructose. But then as soon as it gets to the liver, it gets converted to glucose. So you can't tell that you're loading your body with so much glucose because it doesn't hit the satiety center. And so, that's why the high fructose drinks are so much difficult.
So it's better to eat candy than watermelon.
Is it better to eat candy than watermelon? That's my sister-in-law. So, yeah. But it's, it's a disease of moderation. And once we get on these drugs, we're seeing huge changes. And the other interesting thing that's going to come up is for those of you who are diabetic, because it's genetically passed on, your kids are going to have the diabetes too. And what we're seeing is that sometimes it presents as gestational diabetes. You can see women, as they get to their late pregnancies, they develop gestational diabetes in the second and third. And the reason for that, it has almost the same pathogenesis as type 2 diabetes. Because we know those women who have gestational diabetes go on to develop type 2 diabetes. And what they're trying, there's some people who have started working on this in what we call MODI-3. In Jens Holt's lab in Copenhagen. They're giving the GLP-1s in gestational diabetes, and they're seeing a tremendous change in those ones. And the other thing you look for is in women that have polycystic ovarian syndrome. We're looking at the GLP-1s to see if they help us. But there may be other compounds, they may work on the surface of cells and may help us, because we're looking at what happens in cardiovascular disease. We think that maybe an advantage is to be on the GLP-1 when we have cardiovascular disease. Any other questions? Great. Thank you for
For natural sugars like fruits,
yeah.
it's better to eat more fruits than.
Well, that's fructose. So yeah, it's the same problem. Yeah. Again, you eat what you want. I mean, life's not a matter of not eating it. You just eat it in moderation. It's great. Again, thank you. Good luck.